right, guys, welcome to the show. It's good to be with you guys. It is middle of December, almost December 7th, actually, when I'm recording this, and I hope you guys had a great season. I just recently got back from my last hunt, technically of 2022. I do still have one more hunt coming up in January, which I'm super excited about, but hope you guys had a great season. I know it was a great season for me. I was able to put a tag on my first mule deer ever, and then was able to get a nice mature mule deer on my last hunt, and filled 2 antelope tags in Wyoming. So it's been a great year. Hope you guys had a great season as well. This episode is a really good one. It's full of really great information. So I know silencers or suppressors, have kind of been getting more and more popular lately in hunting. And I actually did my paperwork to get a suppressor back in late February, early March. And I just got word that I've been approved, and it's actually in the shipping process right now. So I'm super excited about that. But there's a ton of misinformation out there about suppressors. I know myself even, I didn't really know much about them. I was kind of confused by the process, and even why you'd want a suppressor for hunting or defense. Since then, I've really learned I was on a hunt with Mark Livesay last year, that bear hunt, and he had a suppressed rifle, and not only is it make it so you don't need ear protection. That's how drastic the sound reduction is. It's actually their hearing safe, or I think it's called hearing safe. But anyway, and they reduce recoil. They can actually help you shoot more accurately. They have a less signature in terms of scaring game away, or if you need to make a follow-up shot. There's tons of great reasons to have one. They're a very useful tool for hunting, and the new technology, they're not that heavy and big as you might think. And Silencer Central is a company that's made the entire process super easy. They walk you through every step of the way. They basically hold your hand through the process, and then at the end of it, when you are approved, the suppressor gets actually shipped right to your door, which is amazing. And I'm pretty sure they're the only company that can do that. So today's guest is actually the founder and CEO of Silencer Central. And when I started the process to get mine, I'd never spoken with anyone. I had no relationship with Silencer Central. At the time of this recording, I still have no professional ties to Silencer Central whatsoever. I just, through my research, found them and heard they were the best. And I gotta say, again, completely from a consumer standpoint, no deals or anything with the company at all. They are amazing. It made the process super simple, as quick as possible. Everything you need gets sent right to you. It's very easy to reach an actual human on the phone. And they've really figured out a way to streamline the process. So if you're thinking about it at all, give them a call. They'll answer all your questions. They're a great tool to have for defense and for hunting, and I can't wait to get mine. I'm going to be probably using it on every hunt from now on. So anyway, today's podcast is great. If you want to hear more about it and the process, and and just from a personal standpoint, I get into some stuff with Brandon Maddox, the CEO, and what it means to build a successful company and how to do that. So it's a great episode. Hope you guys enjoy it. And please don't forget to leave me a rating or a review. Those things are super helpful. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel and be on the lookout. Got some exciting news coming down the pipeline for you guys as far as where the Hunter's Quest is going. Looking forward to sharing that. But for now, let's just jump into this episode with Brandon Maddox from Silencer Central. Enjoy. All right, guys, welcome to the show. This is your host, Hunter, and I'm joined today by my guest, the, founder and CEO of Silencer Central, Brandon Maddox. How you doing, man?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, man. It's great to have you. So Baker from Black Rifle connected us. He's kind of a buddy, and but the funny thing is, I actually started the process of getting a Banish 30 back in late February, early March, and I just
Yep.
got the like tracking like shipping notification like Friday, like a couple days
Oh,
ago.
wow. Hey, perfect. Yeah. No, I did search your email address in my email, and I noticed that. So we
Yeah,
appreciate you being a customer even before we knew you, right?
yeah, man. So I was really hoping to like have it in time, but it's okay. The timing was just a little off, but it's still pretty cool that I was able to connect with you guys like in the timing of it all.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah, man. So so yeah, like I said, at the time of this recording, just for my listeners, I have no official connection to Silencer Central at all. I'm coming at this purely from a customer standpoint, and yeah, so everything I say is completely unbiased. Just kind of I heard of you guys, and I'm not sure where I first came across. It might have been on another podcast or whatever, but I've also met some of you guys at different trade shows and stuff,
Good.
and so and just I want to get more into the process and stuff later, but I just want to say up top, I've been extremely impressed with you guys. The ease of the process, the there's been a couple times where I need to call and change my shipping address one time. There was another time when there was a problem on my end, something I had done wrong. I had to call in customer service, and like I was kind of like beforehand, I was like, oh geez, like it's gonna probably take like 4 hours to get a human on the phone. But no, it was like almost instantaneous. Got a human on the phone. Like super
Perfect.
impressed by that.
Good. Perfect.
So, so anyway, we'll jump into that stuff later. But before we kind of I do want to hear because obviously I'm interested in suppressors and as it relates to defense and especially hunting and stuff. That's kind of the main focus of the podcast. But also, I just like talking to kind of like successful individuals and entrepreneurs and stuff. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your background personally, as well as kind of the formation of the company and that kind of stuff. Just because I'm interested in entrepreneurship and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Good question. So I grew up in North Carolina, not
Okay,
too
cool.
far from
What
where
part?
you are. Yeah.
What part of North Carolina?
Kind of near the Raleigh Durham area.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I went to undergrad and pharmacy school at Chapel Hill there in North Carolina. And
Nice.
then I went into the pharmaceutical industry down in Florida. And then my employer at the time, pharmaceutical industry, told me I had to go back and get my MBA. So I went to Duke just because they were paying for it. So people think
Okay.
that's unusual that I'm a pharmacist. And I went to probably two of the bigger rivalries there on
Yeah.
the East Coast, Duke and
Yeah,
Chapel
seriously.
Hill.
Yeah.
um,
Great schools though.
Yeah, no. So, I spent a first part of my career in the pharmaceutical industry, like sales, sales training, marketing
Yeah.
management, sort of moved up that ladder. And then met my wife, who is also a pharmacist at a pharmacy convention, and she's from South Dakota. So that's how I ended
Okay.
up here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I started shooting prairie dogs out here, and they're not very bright, but they're astute enough that if they hear a shot, they
Yeah.
realize that's probably not going to be a good result for them.
Right.
Um, so it just got frustrating to drive 4.5, 5 hours west, take a few shots, and they all go underground and hide,
Yeah.
and then have to sit there and wait for them to come back up. So that's where I got the idea of getting a suppressor. And it's hard for people to fathom, but like in that 2000, early 2000s, honestly, there was really nothing online about hunting with suppressors.
Yeah,
And
it seems like it's kind of a recent thing that a lot of guys
yeah,
have gotten more into it. Do you think that's because of just it's become easier or
no, that's a good question. I mean, I think so. They really started taking off in 2009, and I think it's because each person has to pay that tax, that $200 to buy one. And I think just with inflation, as not that $200 is nothing, but over time, obviously that's
yeah.
less. But I think also just it seems like it's word of mouth. Once someone uses it, they're
Yeah.
typically hooked, and then they end up getting another one, and then they tell their buddies,
Yeah.
and yeah, so yeah, I used to say back then that everything I read online about getting a suppressor was inaccurate, which was true at the time, which just seems crazy, but everything I would read was totally wrong, which maybe that's helped me because it's created so much misinformation that there's a lot of desire to learn the right information. So
Mhm.
to be in a good position to provide that has been helpful. But so I bought one for prairie dog hunting. I love the suppressor. The process was horrible. They warned me it would be. They said, "Are you sure you want to buy one? It's going to be horrible." And they
Yeah.
were right. It was.
How long
Um,
did it take back then?
Believe it or not, when I first started, it took 2 weeks if you used a
Oh wow.
truss. Yeah, there was no background check on a truss, so it just went
Okay.
right through. Now, the ones I bought as an individual, so it still took a while back then, but I think it was like 6 to 8 months. It just,
Okay.
I mean, it's not a knock on a gun store, but typically a gun store, their business model is you pick out the product you want, you have a background check, and you leave with it. So it's kind of a
Right.
single transaction. I sort of use a crude analogy that we're sort of like an OBGYN. You got to talk to us for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
And there's a fair amount of back and forth, like you said, shipping addresses changes. We need clarification on stuff. So it's a little bit of back and forth. And it's hard for like a retail setting where you have one single point of contact to
Yeah.
manage that. When you start scaling it up, it just starts falling apart.
For
Um,
sure.
so the first one I bought was too heavy, so I was like, "Gosh, I love it, but I want to get a different one." Second one I bought was really short and smaller, so it was lighter, but it's too loud. So it wasn't until the third time that I said, "Hey, I want to get my own license. I want to be able to help myself get one through a process that I can control, and I'm not sort of at the fate of someone else." And
Yeah.
my wife, all her brother-in-laws are big hunters, and they're all dentists, so they have disposable income. So they kind of decided they wanted one after they saw how easy I made it, and
Yeah.
then honestly, I just started working gun shows. It's a little difficult for a Southern boy to move up here to South Dakota and not talk like everyone else and not necessarily be a gun collector. I would say I'm more so now, but back then there was gun shows were based on collectors.
Mm.
They were a little hesitant for silencers. I don't think they kind of felt like I was an outsider. But
Yeah.
once I got into the group and started pushing them, and there's just tons of questions. And like you said, you've seen us at events. We work a lot of events.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of how we got started. Really, was just working events and answering questions and just face to face. I think that's really helped us. We're a little bit different in that we are a manufacturer, we're a wholesaler, and we're a dealer. So it's sort of like a single point of contact for everything.
Right.
My theory being that anytime you have to involve the government with different transactions, you're just asking for trouble. So to have one single point of contact seems to work out really well. And then Silencer Central's licensed in 42 states. So we're able to mail it to your front door there in Virginia, the same as
Yeah.
if you lived in another state where they're legal. So it's worked out really well.
Yeah. That's cool. So, just stepping back a little bit. What drew you to pharmacy? I'm just curious.
My dad's a pharmacist.
Okay.
Yeah. And back then it was only a 5 year program. So I was kind of like, okay, I can go to school for 4 years and I don't know what I'll do. Or, you always have something to fall back on. So I keep
Yeah.
my license up in North Carolina where I went to school. And then my first place that I moved to was Florida. I'm licensed there. And then I'm licensed here in South Dakota. So I keep it up every year. Florida's every 2 years. But yeah, it's something good to fall back on.
Yeah.
Not a big fan of the guy who started Nike, but he had the same concept where he's a CPA and he just
Uh
sort
huh.
of used that as a backdrop as he went through his entrepreneur life, figuring that
Mm-hmm.
I do think you potentially maybe take more risk because you can fall back on something and survive.
Yeah. It's certainly an industry that's probably never gonna go. Well, will never go away.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
that's interesting. So, um, and the thing that's interesting too is like, in a way, it's almost like it kind of sets you up for this in a way because it's another profession where you're dealing with government entities and licensing and state regs and all that. Do you think there's a lot of crossover there that helped you out?
yeah, 100%. It's interesting because the building that we're in now, it's actually the first place I worked when I moved to South Dakota. It was a mail order pharmacy. It's 45,000 square foot building. It's pretty big, but we mailed prescriptions all over the country. I mean, we were
Well, you
doing,
said the building you're in now
yeah,
was the same building with the old company.
where I moved. Yep. So when I
So
first
you
moved
bought
to
it, or
Yeah, yeah, I bought it. Yeah. So when I moved to South Dakota, like just we're living in Florida and our first daughter was born and it was kind of a rough pregnancy. Like we weren't sure she's gonna be healthy. So
mm,
my wife said, "Hey, would it be nice to live near family?" And my family's pretty spread out. So she's like, "Would you be interested in going back to South Dakota?" And I'd come here for Thanksgiving and it's really cold, there's a lot of
yeah,
wind and
especially
people
coming from
talk
Florida,
differently and there's different food and so I was kind of like, well, if you can make as much as you do here in Florida, I'll go. I just didn't think that that was possible.
right?
But fortunately for her, she was able to find a job in about a week. So then I had to find a job. And Cigna Tel Drug was a mail order pharmacy that was based here. And they were looking for a pharmacist in charge, like a head pharmacist. And I told my wife, there's zero chance they hire me because I've never filled a prescription in my life. I applied and they hired me.
Wow.
But this building, when I saw it was for sale, I instantly was interested in it because they had a warehouse where we kept the meds, but then
Uh
also
huh.
had office space, which is really what we needed. So, um, yeah, I kind of got that idea from there, and I do mention that to ATF occasionally because I would say I speak to ATF at least weekly and meet with them 3 times a year, and I remind them that in pharmacy you have to comply with state law and federal law, and really firearms are the same. I mean, we don't
Yeah.
talk about it too much in Virginia and other states that are gun friendly, but there's a handful of states that kind of have their own rules. You got to play by both of them.
Yeah. And do you think that being where you are physically located has been advantageous to kind of this whole thing too?
A lot of people look at me and say, "How in the heck were you able to start that there?" Like they just don't think there's enough population density here. But I tell you, there's sort of this really avid coyote hunters, and that's a huge benefit for coyote hunters. So I would say probably 95% of my business for the first 5 or 6 years was all coyote hunters, and so I think it did help me at the time. Probably didn't realize it that there's a lot of varmint hunting out here and a lot of
Yeah.
hunters, and as we went to additional states, I think people would they'd like to come here and hunt in the Dakotas. So even though you went to Minnesota or you went to Wisconsin or you went to Iowa to promote your products, a lot of people were familiar with coming here and hunt. So they liked the idea of buying something that was based here. So it definitely helped. At the time, you'd think, man, why, this is, if I had a map and you could pick any state, you probably wouldn't have picked South Dakota. You would have probably picked Texas,
Yeah.
Florida, Georgia, somewhere where you have a lot of feral hogs, a lot of, people that are hunting, a lot of firearm ownership. But
Right.
South Dakota's been perfect. I mean, there's not the population density here, but there's definitely the hunters and the people that can
Yeah.
benefit with the varmint hunting.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think that, well, it seems like, I mean, I don't know if you, I don't know like if you're a man of faith or not, but it seems like a lot of things like kind of came full circle and worked out, like almost like this is kind of like your
Oh,
destiny.
totally. Oh, yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah. 100% man of faith and agree 100% that
Oh, cool.
somebody had a plan. Because what's interesting is I was in the pharmaceutical industry and I got fired for doing this part time. Because, before I
Yeah.
just worked weekends, I just worked shows. And then they kind of called me in and said, "Hey, we understand you're doing this on the side. So we're going to terminate your employment." So, of course, my wife
Wow.
wasn't too happy at the time because there, weren't too many jobs in the pharmaceutical industry that paid that well in South Dakota. But it made me sort of retool and think of ways that I could try to make the situation work out.
Yeah. So, was it because it was something you were passionate about and like just enjoyed that kind of industry more than the pharmaceutical stuff? Like, what drew you into that? Or was it just like the entrepreneur side, or kind of both, or what?
Yeah, good question. So
Or was it just a good business opportunity?
yeah, no, I think all the above. So it's
Okay.
interesting because when you're in pharmacy school, you have to put so many hours behind the counter to actually get your license. So, my family is originally from Alabama, so I worked in drugstores there just to get my hours so I could sit for the boards. And people would come in and let's say their copay back then was $5 to get a medication that could save their life. They would complain about spending $5, which I mean I get it. That's just the way it is. But with a suppressor, if somebody wants it and it's for their hobby, they find a way to get the money. It's very
Yeah.
interesting to me that you have a drug for $5 that could save your life and you're complaining about how expensive it is. And then you have a situation where you want something so bad, you find a way to get the money and get it. It was just a
Yeah.
different
That is
experience that
interesting.
it was fun. But the other thing that was very interesting to me about suppressors is one thing I liked about it is having had been in sales and marketing, I could see there was a lot of misinformation. So there was a
Mm.
ton of people being very inquisitive. I
Mm-hmm.
always say it sounds boastful, but every show we've ever worked for the last, 18 years, we're typically, without exception, always the busiest booth because there's a million questions. How do I get it? What's the paperwork?
Yep.
How long's the wait? How do I get it on the gun? Who do I have to tell? Who else can use it? How do I leave it someone when I die? I mean, there's like all these questions. How much will it suppress? Do I have to get one for every gun? I mean, there's so many questions that people just fire away at you, and you
Right.
can tell they really want to know the answer. So you kind of feel like you're bringing value because they don't know it. But the other good thing about working gun shows is it was sort of a social thing where people would go to a lot of the shows so you could get real time feedback about how the process was going. But what
Uh-huh.
I loved the most is there was people that were always on the fence, and I would push them really hard from like a sales perspective to get it. And then 6 months later, you'd see them and they had the biggest grin ever. Like, I absolutely love it. I wish I
Yeah,
talked to you years ago. This is like life changing. This is so cool. Just to have somebody to have that experience. It sounds
for
weird. I
sure.
mean, it's hard to convince people I went to pharmacy school with that this would be, a good choice for a career and be something fun back when I first started. But
Yeah.
I do like filling the knowledge gap, but also I love the before and after. People are like, gosh, I don't know why I waited so long. I like literally 100%. I can't think of anything else you can sell hardly where someone tries it and it just completely changes their outlook on everything. They start shooting more, they start enjoying it more, they
Yeah.
start telling their friends about it, they get more friends to shoot with them. It's interesting.
That is cool. You mentioned like misinformation, and like there definitely is a ton of that. And I'm wondering, also to me it's like, why is it so hard to get one of these things? It's like it's easier to get a gun, which you
Yeah,
could kill someone with, or
yeah,
yourself, or whatever,
yeah,
than it is to get this part for a gun that
right.
doesn't make it any more lethal. Why is that? Do you have any theories?
Chris, I read about this kind of stuff all the time. That's one thing I have done is immersed myself in the compliance side, just
Yeah,
to be able to scale up the business, to be in all these states. You really have to have a good understanding of the
yeah,
background of the laws. But reading sort of the laws from the 30s because it was created in 34. They originally created this National Firearms Branch Act, whatever you want to call it, in response to the machine guns, and they created that $200 tax, and it was
like the
equivalent to
bank robbers with the Tommy guns and stuff.
100%.
Yeah.
So it's basically it's 100% tax on a machine gun is what it was when it was created in 34. So that's where they got to $200. You hear different theories. It's hard to find it documented, but I've heard one theory of um, the Congress wanted to put regular handguns into the NFA Act, and then someone pulled it out and said, let's swap that for silencers. The other side
Hmm.
I've heard is that there was really no advocate at the table for silencers. So when silencers got added, no one said, "Hey, what are we doing?" You hear some like hearsay of whether theories that during the depression people are going to poach their neighbor's cattle and that this would
Uh,
keep that from happening. You hear all kind of theories. I think the most likely theory is that it was added and there was no advocate there at the table that said, "Hey, what are
yeah,
you thinking? This doesn't make sense."
right. Um, yeah, that makes sense. 'Cause even me, like, I've been around guns and shooting guns my whole life, and I think most people that are, coming to you are in that boat, but still, like, there is so much misinformation. So that's interesting. What, you know, you mentioned, like, meeting with the ATF and stuff like that. Like, what is your relationship with the ATF? Because I mean, I was kind of wondered, like, you're kind of taking a process which, it almost seems like it's designed to be a barrier to entry. Like, it's almost like it seems like they want people to just kind of be like, it's too hard and not do it. And you're
Yeah.
coming in and like making it super easy and kind of like almost getting people in mass to get these things. So, do you have a difficult relationship with ATF? Do they like what you're doing? Do they not like it, or is it neutral, or what? How's that like?
Yeah, good question. So when my second location was North Dakota. So first was South Dakota, second location was North Dakota. I found out really quickly I just didn't know what I was doing to go to a second state. So
Uh
I
huh.
hired the National Shooting Sports Foundation. They have a consultant you can hire who comes from ATF, and I ended up hiring them to kind of come in and help me figure out what I was doing. And I think he did a really good job of sort of challenging me to have an open relationship with ATF, meaning that if you don't know, just call them. It's better to call and find out you're doing something wrong and correct it than it is to get caught doing something you shouldn't be doing.
Right.
So that honestly created because what I found out was the process that we use, I've been using for gosh, almost 18 years. There's a form that you're supposed to use with that process that was no longer in print. So I really need to seek out their permission to do something else or to get their feedback on how they wanted me to execute that.
Mm-hmm.
And that created a dialogue where I, started working with them. We have several variances which allow us not necessarily to do something different than other dealers, but it just sort of most of the gun laws are written pre-digital. So if you can
Right.
think of a way that will not conflict with the law, but make life easier for them to inspect you, but also make life easier for you, you can
Right.
present it to them and they can assess it. So I've done enough of those combined with just us being so big that I've gotten to know them really well. To your question, I would say my perception of them is they feel like they're just there to implement whatever Congress tells them to. So they kind of neutral on an opinion about what's good, what's bad. Now, I would say in gray areas they're more opinionated if they feel like it's a public safety issue. I
Right.
don't think they feel like silencers are a public safety issue. Occasionally we'll have one mismailed or something. When I call, it's actually hard for me to get them excited about helping me find it. So I'm not saying they're indifferent, but I could just tell they don't see silencers as a public safety issue. I mean, that doesn't mean they don't regulate us hard. It just means that they're not looking for ways to tighten the screws tighter. I think they feel like the process in place is working because it's not a public safety issue.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know a lot of people in the industry think I'm crazy, but I just have a weird habit of calling them, saying, "Hey, how do we do this? What's the right way?" I mean, at the end
Yeah.
of the day, I've got 43 licenses out there, and if I'm doing something wrong, I'm putting the entire business model at risk, including
Right.
my employees and including my customers. So it's better for me to ask for feedback than to make a mistake. And it has cost me on most occasions when I ask for feedback. They typically want me to do it more stringent than when I'm doing it. It ends up costing me more money. But at the end of the day, I feel like I can sleep because I know I'm doing exactly what they told me I should be doing.
Yeah. You don't want to be cutting corners or worried,
No,
because it's even if it does cost you more in the short run, like if like you said, if you make a big mistake and they find out like way down the road, then that
yeah.
could be really bad.
Yeah, and I'm always anytime they do a presentation like sort of compliance related, I'm always there on the front row taking notes. It just for me because a lot of it was written in 68, the Gun Control Act, and then the NFA part was written in 34. They're so old. You almost have to be talking to them real time just throughout the year so that you know if their interpretation of stuff, as bad as it sounds. I mean, it's
Yeah.
easy to say they shouldn't have the authority to do that, and I agree they shouldn't, but unfortunately they do. So it's almost like it's a reality you got to deal with.
Yeah. Well, I feel like a lot of my listeners probably will sort of know, the advantages of being suppressed, but let's just take it back a little bit just for people who might be like, well, why are we talking about this? Like, why, from your perspective, why get a silencer or a suppressor?
Yeah,
Like,
good
what
point.
what makes them good?
So one thing I will mention that most people won't probably believe, but I can't think of any hunter who's ever bought one who later didn't say it was a good decision. So that's sort
Yeah.
of like the end of the
Yeah.
discussion in the
Because most people,
beginning.
like, the perception in their brain at the beginning is like, oh, that's, it only has like military applications,
Yeah,
or the only reason I want one of those is if I'm like gonna go, assassinate somebody or something. Like,
totally. No, totally. Yeah, I was at a swim meet the other day and I had a customer come to me. He said, "You remember me from about 12 years ago?" And I go, "Oh, yeah." He said, "When I bought one, all my friends said, I'll never buy one. It's too much hassle,
yeah.
yada, 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 a million reasons why they wouldn't want one." He said, "Every one of them have one now, fast
Mm-hmm.
forward, 10, 12
Yeah.
years."
And
And
real
so
quick, before we jump in real quick, just where I thought about it, like, so in the kind of like backcountry western hunting space, I feel like even just in the last like year or two, they've really like kind of like hit.
yeah,
Do you think that like do you have any idea where that came from, or do you think you guys have played a big role in that just by making the process easier, or is it something else that's like because I really do feel like that it's just like I said in the last couple of years you see a lot of guys talking about it, bringing them out. Like, do you know
yeah.
why that is? Is that because of you guys, or is that something? Are you guys just timed right, or what is that?
Yeah, good question. I obviously, you hate to like pat yourself on the back. We really focus on hunting because that's our roots, and that's
Mm,
kind of where I started. I find most people that make suppressors are typically focused more on the tactical, and
yeah.
that's probably a bigger market, the tactical. But from our perspective, hunting's where we started. A lot of our products are built for the hunting, like far
Right.
as super quiet, lightweight, come apart to clean. Those are the kind of things that hunters want. But I do think we do a lot with the conservation groups, far as working events and getting to
Mm-hmm.
know their boards and finding ways to partner with them and talk to their membership. And some of those started out as tough discussions with we're not sure think of a board, typically older, well off, maybe close to
Right.
retirement. They're not 100% on board with this, so we don't know if we can work with you. So there was sort of a grassroots on our part to sit down, meet with them, educate them. Gradually, they become more comfortable. They roll more information out. They do more stuff in their publications and then at events. I feel like it's helped.
Yeah.
Um, I think if you think about it too, like the drive to reduce weight, you see a lot of thin pencil barrels, you see carbon fiber really popular. People are trying to reduce weight. I think there was this negative connotation: the suppressor's too heavy, adds too much weight on the end.
Mm-hmm.
It's not worth the value of putting it in the pack. But I think like our suppressors are 100% titanium. When people pick them up at shows, they're like, man, I'm in, I got to have this, just because it's so much lighter than like a stainless steel model.
Yeah.
I think that's helped too. Part of it is just like I said earlier, I have yet to meet, I can't think of anyone I've met and all the suppressors I've sold over all the years, a hunter who used one that didn't say it's perfect. Because
Yeah.
before they would say, Brandon, I shoot 3 shots a year, 2 shots to sight the rifle in, one to shoot my deer. I never miss. Why would I want a suppressor? So, it's sort of like, well, once you try it, you'll be glad you
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
One
So,
thing is,
oh, go ahead.
well, obviously, one benefit is the sound. Most of them are hearing safe. You don't have to wear earplugs. So that's a benefit. If you think about hunting as typically social, you're there with family, you're there with friends.
Yeah.
If you don't have to wear earmuffs or
Right.
earplugs, you're able to communicate better, which is a huge positive just
Yeah.
from ability
Yeah.
to
I
communicate.
was sorry to interrupt you, but just on that note, I was on a hunt just a month ago, and I shot my deer, and so I'm filming all my hunts for for some content I'm creating. And but anyway, so I shot my deer, and then my cameraman was actually hunting as well. So then it was my turn to be cameraman, and so when I shoot, I only put normally a or an earplug in my left ear.
Yeah.
I've found that I don't need one in my right ear.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is. Maybe you probably know, but anyway, so we're going up there. We're on the stalk. He's right on my left. I got one in my left ear, and I'm filming. At the last minute, I had to switch over and go to the other side, and I didn't have time to put one in. And I'm shooting this 300 Win Mag right here with the brake on it, and I'm just like
Ooh.
holding the camera, like I just know it's coming, like it's gonna hurt. I'm just like, don't flinch, and like, um, it's I don't know. Some guys can do it. It's almost impossible for me to not flinch when the 300 Win Mag goes off like 2 feet from my head.
Oh yeah.
So, and I didn't have an earplug in that. I just knew it was coming. So I ended up getting some pretty shaky footage on that, which is annoying. But that's just one example of like, if I had that thing on there, I wouldn't have to worry about it.
Yeah. You know the
Or
the
and if you're filming, if you got a cameraman with you, you don't got to worry about him flinching
Yeah.
or him throwing
True.
earplugs in or whatever.
No, totally. So we talked about sound, the hearing. The other benefit is recoil. People forget that it's just as effective as a brake, 40 to 45% recoil
That's
reduction.
awesome.
Um, you typically get better accuracy, and it's just having that extra weight on the end of the barrel. I know a lot of video games will say that it negatively impacts like feet per second and accuracy, but that's incorrect. It'll speed it up a little bit,
Hmm.
and it'll actually make it more accurate. It's almost like a
Right.
bull barrel, having a little bit of weight on the
Yeah,
end of the
longer
barrel.
barrel too.
Yep. The benefits I've seen in hunting too are not that anyone's ever missed, but if you miss, you typically get a follow up shot because they can hear the shot go off, but it's not distinct in one spot for them to tell where it came from. So honestly, they don't know which way to run because if you can't tell
Mm.
which way it came from, you don't know which direction to run in.
Yeah.
A lot of coyote hunters will say, "Hey, he started running towards me because he heard the bullet drop behind him, and he started running towards me." Um,
Interesting.
so that's a benefit. Obviously the other part is, like you said, if two people are shooting in the same area, once you shoot, you don't have to necessarily go to a new location because it
Right.
typically won't scare everything off. I spent 2 weeks in Africa doing a safari there. And the big distinction that I found, and you see it a lot in prairie dogs, but even on big game, you could tell almost instantly when you hit if it was a kill shot, just because you're not hearing the loud percussion, you're hearing that thump
Oh,
when
you
it
can hear
hits,
the
and you can
impact.
almost, yeah. So I could tell that the tracker and the professional hunter, they loved it because they could just tell instantly, like, oh, that was a perfect shot. I could tell the way it hit, it was perfect. They just
Yeah,
you have a lot more transparency where you could tell how your shot placement was.
sure. And especially if you're shooting like like a 300 Win Mag,
Oh yeah.
I found out because I went from a 6.5 Creedmoor on most of my hunts last year to this one, and like that's one of the biggest things is like there's so much recoil that a lot of times I'm like asking my camera guy, like, did I hit him? Like, did
Yeah.
you see him?
Yeah.
Did he go down?
Yeah.
Because you just lose it, completely. But yeah, with that, I can imagine you'd be able to hear the impact and maybe able to, get your target acquisition quicker with some less recoil. Do you find that as well?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It seems weird with the prairie dogs because even a 22 250, if you're shooting 400 or 500 yards, you get just enough a jump, then it's hard to keep them in the scope. But with that with the suppressor on there, you don't have to worry about that. And I
Yeah,
shot a 300 Win Mag too when I was in Africa, and it worked perfect. Just you
nice.
could get so many repeat shots because you could just stay right on the animal. You didn't have enough, recoil to sort of jump it off
Yeah.
of your sight pattern.
And one of the pieces of misinformation I had in my brain was that, oh, they will. I kind of thought that Hollywood had like overblown like how much they work,
Yeah.
which maybe they have. I don't know, but I kind of was like, okay, well, yeah, maybe on a 9 millimeter pistol or something, yeah, but on a big hunting rifle, like it's not going to make that much difference. But I was on a bear hunt this year, and I was actually filming for my buddy Mark, and he shot a bear with a suppressed 300 Win Mag, and I was like floored. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you literally don't need ear protection. What's the like decrease in? Is there like a decibel rating that decreases the shot to, or
Yep. So 140 is where you want to be at 140 or less, and then you don't have to wear earplugs.
okay,
And typically, you're going to see it drop it by 30 or 35 decibels. So like a 308, 300 Win Max is going to be in that 165 type range. So, 170. So to be able to drop it, 30, 35 is quite a bit.
yeah,
And especially in open spaces. So you're probably wherever you're bear hunting, it's open, it's perfect. Sometimes
yeah,
if you're in the South, you're in a lot of trees, you'll hear a little bit of echo. But when you're in a bright, open, field, open area, and there's nowhere for that sound to come back, it is impressive.
yeah, yeah. I definitely was impressed by it. So let's see. Let me just hit my list over here. Um, oh yeah. What I wanted to ask was, um, so I know that. So if I purchase one, um, I know that I can't like loan it out. But let's say we're in that same kind of uh, situation I was just mentioning. A lot of times on these like backcountry hunts, we're already bringing in camera gear and 8 days worth of stuff, so we'll just share one rifle.
Yep.
Is it legal for if the thing's in my name only, I shoot my deer, and then my buddy uses my rifle when I'm there present? Is that hunky dory?
Yeah, yeah, that's fine. So they say you don't sort of the direction I've gotten from ATF verbally is that you don't lose possession of it if you can still see the person. So if they're
Okay.
still, within your sight, you haven't lost possession of it, so another person could use it. But then, of course, the benefit too is we give you a free gun trust, so you could actually add someone to the gun trust as long as they're 18 or older and they're not prohibited, and then that person can use it when you're not there.
Okay.
There's no background check or anything to add them. It's just a stroke of a pen adds them, so it's convenient and not that difficult.
Yeah, since you mentioned it, I think that's probably a point of confusion for a lot of people.
Yep.
In fact, myself included, until I just listened to another podcast you were on. But could you run through the trust thing, like why
Yeah.
set up the trust and like do you guys do that?
Yeah. Yeah. Good question. So, a lot of people say, do I buy as an individual or do I buy as a trust? Obama changed some laws in 2016 that sort of clouded the issue even further. In my mind, the trust is really the only way to go. It creates a joint ownership. Essentially, it also keeps the suppressor a little bit of an arm length distance from you personally.
Hmm,
Basically, the trust owns the suppressor. So think of it as almost like a mini corporation that owns the suppressor, and then anyone else you add to it can also use it when you're not there. You
hmm,
can also designate who gets it when you pass away. So that's beneficial just from like a succession planning.
yeah.
And yeah, and it sounds essentially, we've been doing it so long. Unfortunately, I've had the spouses call where, hey, I'm a widow. What do I do with this now? And really the best way to handle it is through a gun trust. So we set it up, for you free, and then make it where it's pretty turnkey from that point. If you want to add people to remove people, we have a template where you can just sort of plug and play. But
Cool.
um, yeah, it's definitely the way to go, just because you can share it with other people, so people can use it when you're not there, and also it
Yeah.
picks who gets it when you pass away. And if you want to only have yourself on there, then that's fine too. So then, but you still have the benefit where you could do more stuff than if you have it as an individual. Because as an individual, really only you can have it, and then it is a lot of paperwork once you pass away to get it transferred to somebody
Yeah.
else.
So if I do the trust, which you guys automatically do that with all your customers, correct?
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Cool. At no extra cost, I think too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yep.
Um, so my son's only 8 years old now, but let's say 10 years or whatever,
Yeah.
he's going out hunting for by himself. If I add him to the trust, I can just he can take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the process was so easy. I already am thinking about the second one. But I have to. You
That's
have to
good.
do the process again, right? You can't just get another one on the same trust or
We'd use the same truss because we keep it on
a
file, and then
same
we got your
trust, but
fingerprints. Yeah, so
you
it's a little bit quicker because we have all your information still on file.
right. But
But
that
yeah,
you
you
still have
still
to
got to
go
go
through
through
the
the
ATF
process.
process
Yeah,
again. Okay.
yeah, exactly.
But the beautiful thing is, which might be obvious to some people, but I was really stoked when I found out. I kind of when I came in was thinking, oh, I need a different one for every single
Yeah,
rifle I have,
totally, totally.
but you don't,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people have that perception. I do think that is an obstacle. People are like, I'm afraid I'll like it and I'll have to get one for every gun. But
Yeah.
most people will buy one for 30 cal, like we have a Banish 30, and it works on
Hmm.
pretty much every centerfire rifle you have. So
Yeah.
it's nice just to be able to move it from gun to gun to gun and not
Yeah.
have to worry about getting one for everything.
That was literally like that was actually probably the point where I was like, okay, I'm sold.
Yeah,
Because
good.
yeah, the guy was like, oh no, you just buy one for your 30 cal and you can use it for anything. And I was like, okay, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
That was awesome. So,
And I
so
don't know if you did this, but we allow people to do easy pay where they can pay while they wait. We don't charge any interest or any fees. That's beneficial. I mean,
yeah,
I used to work shows and guys are like, gosh, if I buy this today and put all this money out and I may not see the silencer for a while, my wife's going to kill me. So that's why we said, hey, if you want to put a couple $100 down, just call our team. They'll get it started for you. Just pay while you wait. There's no interest. There's no fees. I mean, we're in the boat with you. We want it approved as soon as possible because it's sitting here waiting on you.
yeah. Okay, so this is great, man, and I think we're probably clearing up a lot of questions for people. Before I could move on, are there any other like big kind of that I missed, like misconceptions you think that like people were like, I don't want to do it, that kind of keep people from doing it, that you kind of hear over and over that we could clear up right away?
Well, the process, and of course we got it where it's all digital, so we can send you to, sign via DocuSign. So that's good. I think people find it odd that we can mail the suppressor to your front door. I think
Yeah.
that creates, at one point ATF said they were getting 300 calls a week asking, how does he do that? The reality is there's no background check required because the ATF has already done the background check for us. And there's a federal statute that says if no background check is required, you don't have to meet face to face. So that's how we're able to,
Nice.
sort of work through that from a, federal law perspective. Because even a lot of dealers are like, no, there's no way. Anytime there's a firearms transfer, you have to meet face to face. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of passionate, people out there that are like, oh, these guys were all wrong. There's no way this works. But, it's been fully vetted. And like I said, we talk to ATF pretty much weekly and meet with them 3 times a year. So
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like you guys are doing everything, really doing everything above board. I guess just for folks out there, so we can just clear it up, because the process is super simple. You guys have really made it efficient. Just run us through what's it like, and of course that big question everybody wants to know: how long does it take?
yeah, yeah. So you mean to run through the process, kind of how it works or
Yeah,
whatever?
yeah,
Yeah, sure. Okay. So you know, sort of start from the beginning of like sort of what it is. Think of it as a title transfer. I like to use the analogy of it's just like buying a truck. So the only difference is when you buy a truck, you leave the lot with it. But in our scenario, the silencer is titled to us. So the ATF has us as the title holder,
okay,
almost like a truck. When you buy the suppressor from us, we're asking the ATF to essentially retitle the ownership from us, the dealer, to you or
gotcha.
your trust, and the feds charge a $200 fee to do that. So just like if you were to buy a truck, you had to pay the tax at the local courthouse, kind of the same concept.
Mm-hmm.
And then they run a background check on you to make sure you can legally own and possess a firearm on behalf of the trust. And then once they approve that then we'll do a 4473 with you, the same thing you do when you buy a firearm,
Right.
at a local store. We'll do that with you digitally, and then we mail it to your front door once it's approved. But some of the things that we need is like the national firearms paperwork we'll send to you digitally to fill out and sign. We'll send you the trust to kind of fill out and data entry there. Um, that then we'll also send you a fingerprint card. When the
Mm-hmm.
statutes are written, they do a background check based on your fingerprints, just because in 34 when this was created there was no national felony database. The only way they had was just if you've been arrested they would be able to tell by your fingerprints. So we send you a fingerprint card and also ink to do your own fingerprints. You mail it to us, we scan it in. We have to get a picture, just as a 2x2 picture. People typically think a passport, but
Yeah.
just you standing up against the white background wall, take a picture, send it to us. We convert everything to digital that we get back from you. So we convert your fingerprints, we convert your photo, we create the trust you created and all the ATF paperwork. We upload it to the ATF website digitally. And then basically we wait for them to approve it. There's another step in there where we probably did like a video call with you for you to confirm we filled out all the information
Yeah.
correctly. Since we didn't meet with you face to face, ATF requires that you go through and check and make sure you fill everything, that you check the box you're not a felon, and that you
Right.
have your own username and password that only you know when you enter in. So you entered that in. That's also to help just ATF confirm that we had your identity correct, that you are who you say you are.
Yeah.
Um, and we submit all that to the ATF, and then it comes back to us approved digitally. And when it comes back approved to us digitally, we send you that 4473 form. You fill that out. We mail that locally to what they call a chief legal enforcement officer to let them know that we're mailing it to you. And then we have to wait 7 days, and then we mail it to your front door. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So the simple terms is think of it as a title transfer. Feds have us as the owner. We ask them to retitle it to you. They do a background check to make sure you can lawfully own it. Once they confirm you can, they do the transfer and the wait time. So, like I mentioned, when I first started, the wait time was 2 weeks, believe it or not. They weren't very popular back then.
Yeah.
During the Obama administration, I saw it, he changed some laws on the trust, and I saw it jump up to almost 2 years.
Wow.
Right now it's weird because we have paper and we have digital. And e-forms originally came out in 2014. It only lasted about a year. The system just got overwhelmed. The amount of demand to that digital system just overwhelmed it, and it
Hmm.
crashed. And they just never really resurrected it because they had to change some things based on the law changes. But they reenacted that in almost a year ago. So December 23rd of 2021, they reissued that. And we had the impression it was going to be really quick, like they were telling us that it was going to be 90 days. But the hard part was they had about a year's worth of paperwork that had
Ah,
come in during the
still in.
pandemic
Yeah.
that they hadn't flushed out.
Gotcha.
So we do feel like right now they're focused almost solely on the paper stuff that's been sitting at ATF for a long period of time. So their goal is to flush that out by the end of the year. And
Hmm.
I think based on ours specifically, looks like they're going to make that happen. And those were all the paper ones that were submitted prior to eForms launching. So the question in my mind is they say 95% of all Form 4s that come in for silencer purchases now come in via eForms, which we submit. I feel like that if they don't have this backlog of paper, they're going to be in a better position to process the digital. They tell us it takes about 25% the amount of time to do a digital as it
Mm.
did to do paper. So I know it's going to be quicker.
Yeah.
The hard part is having done this for almost 20 years, as approval times go down, demand goes up and people buy more, and then the approvals start taking longer and the time takes more. So it's almost like this,
Yeah.
as they get quicker approving them, then demand goes up and more people buy them or more people buy another one, and then it starts slowing down the time. But
Right.
my team's telling me even digital right now, well, you saw February, so it's
Yeah.
like an 8, 9, 10 month range is
Hmm.
what people are seeing.
Yeah.
um, I'm always hesitant to say because then people take it so personally. If you tell, like, if someone called me today, and of course, our sales team would say, "Hey, we're seeing 8 months right now." There's people that put that on their calendar, and they'll call you at 8 months and say, "It's not approved. You guys lied to me." And it's like, well, no, we told you that's what it was when
Yeah.
you bought.
A
We
range.
have no
Yeah.
crystal ball. We can't
Right.
tell. We put a little pressure on ATF. I was up there at headquarters a few months ago, and their feedback was, "Hey, we told you 90 days, but last year we had 375,000 applications. This year we got 800,000 applications. So it's easy for you all to give us a hard time for taking 3 times the amount of time, but you guys are
Yeah.
sending us about 3 times the volume." So
Yeah.
um, the hope is that as the government continues to see it's not a public safety issue, and hopefully as we get more Republicans in office, we can get more examiners to process them more quickly. That's the goal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, it sounds like from somebody listening, like it may sound like a lot of stuff and complicated, like the way he kind of just said it, but just from my perspective, and again, this is totally unbiased. Like when I did this, I still have no affiliation to you guys in any way, so at every step of the process, there was emails with easy step by step directions. There was even videos telling you how to do it. And then like when it came to the e-forms, like you literally have someone call you and walk you through the process, share the screen on your computer with you. Um, like it really, you guys really have it down to an efficient, very
Yeah.
well done system. The picture thing is super. They tell you exactly how to do it. You can do it with your cell phone camera. It's really done well.
Good. No, yeah, and I think with the volume we have, if we didn't have a good process, we'd be in trouble.
Yeah,
So,
and just the people. To be
yeah.
honest, like this crowd, I'm sure there's a lot of kind of
Oh yeah.
demanding
Oh
type
yeah. Oh yeah.
customers, and
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
even
yeah.
some nuts. Honestly,
No, it's funny. No, it's yeah, I've got probably 120 people here. That's all they do every day is make the process simple. And we meet every morning at 8:30 a.m. and I remind them of that. Sometimes we get busier this time of the year, but at the end of the day, some people may not see their product for 8 or 10 months, and they've
yeah.
bought based on the promise that we're going to make the process easy and we're going to mail it to their front door. And we can't forget that because if we do, the people that have bought are not going to be happy, and then they're not going to refer their friends. So every day I
Hmm.
just sort of hit that mantra of how can we find ways to make it simpler? And we do have
Yep.
like a director of customer experience, and she's very good about,
Yeah.
reading everything we send out to make sure that it's, user friendly and that we have videos where we can, and then use text messages as reminders because a lot of
Right.
people don't read email anymore. So it's, how do we evolve as our customer evolves to make it even easier?
Yeah. And it's always cheaper from your perspective to retain a customer than
Oh, yeah.
get a new one, sign a new one
Oh,
on.
100%. Yeah, totally. Because if someone has a good experience, some people like it's like a big accomplishment to have made it through the process and get a silencer just
Yeah.
for them personally, like, oh, I made it through. I got a suppressor, it's almost like a security clearance for them or something. So then
Yeah.
they tell their friends. It's almost like a bragging, like, hey, I
Yeah.
got this, and these guys take care of everything and they make it easy, call them, and.
Yeah.
But the good thing is what you sort of articulated to me is we have a good system in place. Like everything is
Hmm.
automated. Like once you do one thing, the system then asks you to do this, or
Yeah.
everything is just it flows really well and it's
Yeah.
very buttoned down. And there's a
And you
lot
get
of
confirmations that make you feel warm and fuzzy
yeah,
inside.
that's good. That's perfect. That's exactly.
um,
Believe me, we've had years where those weren't in place. So it's an evolution. But like I said, we've been doing almost 20 years. Started in
yeah.
2005.
So kind of taking it a little bit back from the kind of specifics of suppressors and stuff. Just from an entrepreneurial standpoint, a business standpoint, like you have built a large and very, in my opinion, well-run company. Are there some core values that you think are essential to building a successful business that you kind of live by or run the company by?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we do have a set of core values that we focus on here. And our biggest focus is integrity. And the example we typically use is with ATF. I mean, if they call and say, how are you doing this? I think they find it odd when we're honest with them. I'm not saying everyone's dishonest with them, but I sense they're like, really, you just told us that, knowing that it's not what we want to hear. And it's like, yeah, well, we want to fix it if it's not right. So integrity definitely has been very beneficial to us. It just it also helps with communicating with customers because sometimes things don't go as great as you would think. I mean, I've seen system errors where somehow it put a guy in as a female instead of a male, and then he gets his form. They send it back to us correct. It might add a delay, or it's just
Yeah.
it's just being honest with them, saying, "Hey, we made a mistake. Our system somehow put in the wrong thing. We want to work with you to make sure you're happy. And how do we fix it?" So integrity definitely. Also, really focus on the customer. I
Mm.
mean, I mentioned that me working gun shows. I think that's so important. Like there's a lot of great manufacturers of suppressors out there, but if you think about it, they probably have 5 customers. They sell to wholesalers, whereas me, having worked gun shows, I've talked to thousands of people, and I can see in their eyes what's important to them. And what I've uncovered, my business mission is to make the process easy, which is
Yeah.
completely different than really anyone else in the business. Everyone else is, well, to have this or have that. Our whole sole focus is making the process easy because, in my opinion, when someone would come to our booth, 99% of their questions were about the process. And once they could sense that we have the process nailed down, like you've experienced, then they say, all right, I want to get one. How do I get started? They don't
Yeah.
really say, I want a Dodge or Chevy or Ford. They just say, hey, you guys got it figured out. That was my biggest concern. Help me figure out what I need now and let's move it
Yeah.
forward. So really focusing on that, customer has been the sort of the key to our success too. So obviously the integrity part through the whole process, and then focused on the customer. And then the last thing that we put as one of our core values is winning. I mean, growing up in the South, college football, you love when the team that wasn't supposed to win wins,
Oh yeah.
just because they put it all together and found a way to succeed. I mean, we've had a lot of obstacles over the years. I mean, dealing with the federal government, trying to get licensed in 43 states, in 42 states. That earned me a expense paid trip on my own to meet with the ATF and get sort of beat up by 40 of their bureaucrats. And I would say they were probably hoping I wouldn't make it through. I think in
Mm,
retrospect, they told me they didn't think I was going to make it through. And their goal was to, sort of intimidate me and brush me up and add so many regulations I couldn't handle it. But we always, stepped up to the plate and showed them that we could do it, and we were organized and we were professional. And sometimes we weren't making any money because we were going through all these regulations they were requiring. And then
yeah.
once we mastered them, we found ways to streamline them and make them easier. So
Yeah.
so the first component is integrity, and the second is focus on the customer, and then the third one really is just finding a way to win. Winning at all
Yeah.
costs sounds horrible, but it's just always thinking about how do we win? How do we win for the customer? How do we win for Second Amendment? How do we win for hunters? How do we win for people that want to go through the process but think it's overwhelming or it's going to be tough?
Right.
How do we create a win for them?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's truly an accomplishment what you've done because you have a product with a high like they always say like remove barriers to sale. Like you want people to
Yeah,
just be able to just buy.
yeah,
You have a product that's like you're asking someone like you said to buy something they're not going to see for almost a year.
yeah,
Like it requires a lot of like effort to buy
yeah,
this thing. It's
totally.
not cheap.
Yep,
You're dealing with the federal government and
totally.
state government, which is like a pain.
Yep.
So like this is like a big time accomplishment that you're able to do this and build a successful, well run company. So I'm interested, like you know, in really honestly, you personally, like, what are some things you've built into your personal life, you as an individual, Brandon, to make you a high performing, successful individual?
Good question. I'm a big reader, so I always try to get, ideas from other people that have been there, done that. I'm also part of a CEO like group that I meet with every month. So tomorrow on Thursday, I'll go there for a full day and you meet with other CEOs. And what I love about that is, and I just recently started that, but what I love about it is you're able to bounce ideas off people that aren't in your industry, and
Yeah,
they can level set you and help
completely
you.
different perspective.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's so valuable. Um, the interesting, I think the hard part about this job initially was I was the guy answering the phone during the week, and then on the weekend I was the guy working the show. So it was kind
Yeah,
of a 24/7, 7 days a week kind of thing. Now that my kids are younger, it's like, how do I find time to spend time with them, and then let the people that are here running the business run the business and not make them think I'm in their sandbox, and let them. But also the compliance part's still in my head, so I have to be very buttoned down and hands on every process, because if you don't watch it, operations will always try to make something easier, and then you have to go back and say, hey, there's a reason why we do that. It's a compliance requirement. It'd obviously be easier to do it other ways, but we got to make sure that we're remaining compliant and doing it based on what is expected of us. But
hmm
that's a good question. I can't think of trying to think of other
Are there
things.
ways you manage stress, like things that you do in your
Boy,
personal life?
you got to focus on your faith. I mean,
There you go.
that's the boy, because gosh, I mean, the time I went and met with the ATF, and there's 40 or 50 people in there, and you're like, wow, how am I going to make it through this? So it just,
Yeah,
yeah, over time, and also you've probably seen this in life too. Once you get a couple successes, then it gives you a little bit more confidence, and then you take on more the
yeah.
next time, and then more the next time, and then
I
more the
killed the
next time.
bear and I killed the lion. I'll take on this
Yes.
Philistine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, totally. Yeah. No, it's been fun and exciting. I mean, like I said, rarely, I can't think of anyone I've ever found who once they got one and shot it, who's like, man, this is awesome. I
Yeah,
wish I'd done this, years ago. Yeah, no, and it's fun too. Like even the bank that sort of supports us, people don't realize, people in the Second Amendment industry understand the obstacles. I mean, PayPal won't work with us, Google won't work with us. We can't
yeah.
do advertising, we can't do Facebook ads, we can't do Instagram ads. We're really
Mm,
blocked out of everything
wow.
banks typically won't lend to you because they consider it, higher risk and it's firearms. So when you're able to succeed and overcome like all these sort of obstacles that society creates against you, it does make you feel better. It also makes you a tighter knit group. When you do meet with other
Yeah.
people that have overcome the same obstacles, you're like, wow, you kind of went through the same thing and you're able to find ways to make it happen too.
Yeah. And I apologize. I'm getting too personal here. It's just like it's kind of part of the theme of the podcast is
Yeah.
spirituality and stuff. And knowing
Yeah.
that you're a man of faith, like you said, focus on your faith. Do you have anything like for me? I just try to wake up like an hour early before my kids get up
Yeah.
and spend time in the Word and kind of pray and stuff. Do you have anything like that you do to try to keep? Because I'm the same way, man. Like, when stuff gets hard, like, I have to lean back, like, on God. He's my rock. So, like, that's huge for me. Is there anything
Yeah.
that you kind of have built into
So
your life to do that?
yeah, so I like to walk at night for usually about an hour, and then
Cool.
that's where, I spend most of the time saying, "Hey, I don't have it figured out. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to lean on you to help me figure out what I'm doing and help, it's almost like I'm requesting that either you send the right people to me to help me make the right decision, or if I
Yeah,
feel like something's not going right, how can you help me like see that? And it seems to really help because it's just
for sure.
because then you start feeling that divine intervention. Like when you do meet someone, you're like, oh my gosh, like you're the exact person I needed at this time.
Yeah,
Um, it sort of reaffirms the whole process of the benefit of just admitting, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Every day is a new day, and I feel like I'm making a lot of mistakes. Can you help me see the right path or help me get in contact with the right person so
yeah,
that I'll know the right thing to do? Because the hard part for me with the pharmaceutical industry is, I was like the top sales manager in the country and I had like a ton of success. So to get fired for doing the suppressors just felt like a real, like, sort of the rug was
yeah.
pulled out completely underneath me. And that's when I went to God and I was like, man, I feel like every time I give 100% and I focus and I'm being successful, it's not the plan that you have for me because I always seem to just get hit like right in the face. Like
Mm,
it's like a reminder that the more time I put in, the less success I have. So, just sort of in an angry manner, I was like, you got to show me what I got to do. You got to, and it was interesting because my attorney, I said, hey, should I try to sue that company for firing me? He's like, dude, that's rear view mirror. You got to focus on the future. And
yeah,
within a few days, I got another job from another pharmaceutical company paying more. And I told him no, that I'm going to focus. I'm going to double down on the firearms. I'm going to be self-employed and not have to worry about someone firing
nice.
me because of what I'm doing. I ended up working part-time as a pharmacist, just more counting pills, just to pay the bills until I could get the silencer thing up and running. But
Yeah,
and it was just verification, look at the pill, make sure it's in the right bottle, and I just worked that for 30, 40 hours a week until I could wean off and then focus solely on this. And then it feels like things did take off better. It feels like it was part of a plan, which is
for sure.
yeah, it does give you it reconfirms that you're doing the right stuff by asking God to help you. When it does turn out well, then it just makes you ask again, how,
Yeah,
hey, I feel like I'm heading the right direction. Gosh, this feels so good. Help me get to the next thing. What is it for me?
yeah. Yeah, man, I love the thing about like walking and praying at night. It's kind of adding some moving your body at the same
Yeah,
time, kind of some mental and or physical and spiritual thing, and yeah, the humility piece is so big. Like God, I mean, God just wants to help people to have like a humble spirit
yeah,
and bring your request to Him. And then the other thing I thought about when you're saying is I heard a pastor say one time like the most dangerous thing in the world is being successful at the wrong thing. You
yeah,
know?
yeah. No, totally. I think where I fall behind is giving him the glory. Like once it's successful, like if I'm walking, I might spend the first half of the walk, hey, I just want to recognize and call out and give you the glory for this having worked out so that it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like I'm just sitting there all the time asking for something.
Absolutely. That's great, man. Um, well, cool, man. I appreciate you talking to me about that stuff. Um, I just had a couple more questions. We're almost done. I don't want
Yeah,
to take up too much of your
sure.
time.
No, that's fine.
Um, you have your finger kind of on the pulse of, federal government and, like I said, compliance and all this stuff. So I'm just curious from your perspective, you hear a lot of guys, a lot of people doom and gloom and some people are the opposite, just as a general like society, How do you see like what's like the state of the union as far as like Second Amendment and like where we're headed? Like, are you kind of worried by some of the stuff coming out of this current administration, or you think it's mainly rhetoric? Do you think is the future bright? Is it gloomy or neutral? Like, what do you kind of what's the pulse like?
Yeah, good question. So what I've seen federally is typically you see it enacted at a state level first. So what I do is I typically watch what I would consider the blue states and try to figure out what they're doing firearms related, because whatever they do at a state level, if it's implemented and put into place, it then becomes a playbook for federal.
Hmm.
I'm a little concerned about that issue that got approved in Oregon. Talking to some people in Oregon, it feels like that maybe the way it was worded was a little confusing, and I think putting it on the ballot issue surprised some people. I was kind of surprised it got passed. But I do think that if you start seeing more things change at a state level, then it's going to eventually move to a federal level. I don't think that the Biden administration right now has the votes to get anything done outside of like executive orders. I think even having, the House of Representatives now being Republican, creating a little bit more oversight with Jim Jordan and sort of the Judiciary Committee oversight over ATF. They know someone's looking over their shoulder, putting them on the stand for testimony. I think that's going to keep them in check at a federal level, hopefully.
Yeah.
Um, but as far as the overall state, I mean, the hard part is when I first started doing this, it wasn't legal to hunt in every state, and now we're 41 out of 42
With a
states that are
suppressor.
legal. Yeah, in 41 states you can hunt with a suppressor now. So I've seen it move in a positive direction. And silencers weren't legal in 42 states when I started either. Even bordering me, Iowa and Minnesota, it used to be illegal, and now they've turned lawful. So of the few things I've seen positive change over time, it's been suppressor related and hunting with suppressors. But um, I always say what's best. Typically, people in the firearms industry will say what's best for business is Democrats. If people feel like there's fear they may lose it, they'll buy more. From my perspective, I don't want laws to change, so I love gridlock.
Yeah.
If there's gridlock, I think that's helpful.
Yeah.
I've started spending more time and money up in DC just to educate elected officials, and it takes a long time. Like even my state elected officials, we have a nice building, we have a lot of employees. I try to invite them every time they're up for reelection or in the state to come by. I think that's helped. Some of them it's taken many years. I mean, I used to call on Kristi Noem when she was our in the House of Representatives. Now that she's our governor, I know her really well, and I feel like if there was an issue impacting us as an industry, that her team would reach out to me and get my feedback, which is really where you want to be. You want to be in a
Yeah.
position where you have advocates, but also if they don't hear from you and they don't know what's good and what's bad, they can't help you. So it's having that open communication with their team and then having access to them. Um, I think it's status quo for a while. I obviously hope that we get more, a Republican president in,
Yeah.
and that'll soften things up again. But the pendulum is always swinging. I don't feel
Hmm.
like there's been enough negative situations in the media for there to drive any additional actions,
Yeah.
hopefully at a national level.
Well, that's good. Um, Real quick, the last thing I wanted to ask you about was I know you just guys released a new product that would be
Yes.
probably very interesting to my listeners.
Yeah.
Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah. So a lot of people kept saying, hey, can you make a lighter, shorter, effective suppressor? And the concept being I want something super light, like so light that it's easy for me to justify carrying it on a backcountry hunt, and it's easy for me to still be hearing safe. So after a couple years of R&D, we came up with a Banish backcountry, and it's
Nice.
only 5.5 inches long far as length on it, and it's 7.8 ounces in weight. And
And what's the
we're
the regular Banish 30?
regular Banish 30 goes out to 9 inches, so it's modular, so you could take it down to
Right.
seven.
And what's
It's
the
gonna
weight
be
on that one?
it's like 16 ounces full, and it's like 10 in the modular.
Okay, so that's a significant weight reduction. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah, and it's so the interesting thing about the Banish backcountry is the baffles are all welded together, so it's really super light. There's no tube per se. And it's very effective just from a call, from a suppression of the silencer. People are afraid, oh, it's going to be too short. The diameter is a little bit bigger. It's like 1.6. A normal diameter is 1.5. So it's just a little bit bigger diameter wise, but length, it's short, doesn't add that much length to the end of the barrel. It's super light, being that it's all titanium. It's been very, very well received. I mean, the hard part, like you said, is sometimes it takes so long to get one. It's hard to get a whole lot of positive feedback, but just some of the people that we've sent out with it so far have been like just wow impressed. But it's there's never really been in my mind a suppressor created specifically for the backcountry, and the
Yeah.
whole goal being super lightweight and also quiet. It's a small niche. I mean, it's not for everyone, but we find a lot of hunters too have been hesitant to buy a silencer because it might add too much length to the end of the
Right.
barrel. So by having this 5.5 inch one is very attractive.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, guys like me who are already carrying tons of weight, like,
Yeah.
spend all this money on getting 6 pound rifles, like, that's important for
Oh
people.
yeah.
So I think it's a smart move, and I just wish you'd released it a year ago.
Oh
It's okay.
no.
I'll get another one. It's okay. I'll get it. Well, that's cool, man. Yeah, this has been great. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to say? Just kind of closing thoughts or anything? That's kind of pretty much all I had.
Yeah, no. A lot of people ask me like the best way to get in touch with us, best,
Hmm.
how. So Silencer Central, you could do a Google search for Silencer Central, silencercentral.com, and look online. But honestly, the best feedback I get is if you just call. I mean, we have a full call center here, and it's
Yeah.
all guys that hunt, and they can answer every question you have. They'll cover the stuff like you talked about on the process. They can set it up where you pay while you wait. We find that if we ask people to rate their experience at Silencer Central, it's always so much better if they talked to a person live. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean you can't buy on our website. I mean, it's
Yeah.
automated, it'll take care of it. But then I think you feel like you have a person in the process that you can email or call and have questions
Yeah.
with. Um,
That's what I did. I called him, and he was good because I called like, all right, well, I'm just gonna get some, ask some questions, and by the end of it, I was like, I already had bought one.
oh, there you go. Good.
By the end of
Yeah.
the conversation.
I just find that people have a better experience because then if they buy it online and if they have a question,
Yeah.
of course they call our customer service, but it just seems like
Yeah.
it doesn't cost anything to call. We got a full call center here that want to
Yeah.
talk to you guys. That's just go
And
to the
it's not some
website.
random call center like some dude in India.
No, it's
Like it's a
here.
guy who knows about the suppressors and stuff.
100%. Yeah.
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 Well, cool, man. Well, this has been great. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it, and looking forward to probably here in a couple of days getting mine and,
There
and
we
getting out
go.
in the range with it.
I love it. Perfect. Well, I appreciate you having us on the show.
Yeah, man. Thanks for your time.
Absolutely.